An epic sports weekend comes to a close. The NFL draft was all the drama we expected it to be. The NHL season is wrapped up, and we had some interesting NBA series close out as we head into the semifinals now. This is episode 201 of The Next Best Bet. I'm Jake Higgins with Brett Levy. And Brett, we're going to talk a little bit more about the draft in a second, but just recapping how we did last episode. My NFL picks didn't do great. I went 1 for 2, but that was because I assumed Evan Neal wasn't going to fall to the Giants. He ended up making it all the way down to 7, and the Giants got him, so I'm not mad about that loss personally.
That's a good loss. Nice. Glad to see that, Higgins. Yeah, Sixers got it done for me on the Levy lock, so I'm happy about that in a 500 episode. So, Higgins, I think we'll make do and, move on pretty okay with how we ended up.
I also had 2 futures that went 1-1 because I picked series winners in the first round of the NBA playoffs. The Mavs did win their series. The Nuggets did not win their series against the Warriors, so it'll be interesting to see how those teams fare in the next round. Brett, jumping into our Beginner's Boulevard, though, real quick, I wanted to talk about a term called the Parolee System, and this is more common of a system that's used for like roulette or blackjack within a casino, but it can also be used for sports betting, and it's a positive progression style of betting where you start with your original wager, and after every win, you double your wager amount, and then after 3 wins in a row, you go back down to your original wager amount. So it's a little risky, but it's a way to try to ride a hot hand.
Fair enough, Higgins. I have no idea where you found the word Parolee System, but it's a good thing for me to sit here and understand. And look, I definitely know some aggressive gamblers, right, who like to do this in blackjack and whatnot. So, I've seen it done on casino games before, for sure, Higgins.
Interestingly enough, you'd assume the name Parolee, it's someone's last name that came up with this system, but it's actually not. It derives from some Latin words to come up with the term Parolee, and you can trace this term back all the way to like the 16th century, although it's unclear where it exactly started. So this is an old gambling term.
Old gambling term here, but fresh out the book on Next Best Bet.
Absolutely. Brett, before we jump into our picks, we got to talk about the NFL draft, specifically some winners and losers. And not only did you go 1-2 with your picks, but you got a good win with your Christian Watson under. But you have to be really happy with how the Jets did.
Yeah, I think the Jets, obviously one of the feel-good stories of the draft. I think Baltimore did pretty well, Higgins.
I'd say the Lions, too.
Yeah, okay, Lions. Some people saying the Colts did really well as well, even without that day 1 pick, or the first-round pick. So there were definitely some winners. And then, there were some head-scratchers for sure. New England, left a few people scratching their head, trading up for the Thornton out of Baylor in day 2. They also drafted the Chattanooga. Yeah, exactly. Strange. Come on now.
Strange.
Higgins.
Sorry, Strange. They drafted a different guy named Strong.
Okay, fair enough. So, I think, some winners, some losers, but truthfully, you won't have any idea until about like 3 or 4 years into this thing, right?
Absolutely. The only thing that in terms of betting value that you can take from this is if you were really happy with how one of these teams' drafts went, maybe you think it sways them on a win total and you end up taking them on an over win total compared to before the draft. But I don't know. It's still too far away from me. I liked the Giants draft. Day 1 kind of carries their draft card, though, as you go further down. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, a wide receiver they picked on day 2. Good pick. Some people are saying they may have reached for him a little bit, but Brett, you and I have said in years past, if that's your guy and you don't know if you're going to get to him in round 3 or with your next pick, it's not insane to necessarily go for that stretch, especially with the Giants who traded back twice to begin round 2 and then just sat there finally and made their pick.
Yeah, I think a big thing that's missed, like, in the draft process, right, is we sit here for months and months reading so-and-so's mock draft and so-and-so's top rankings. Well, unfortunately for so-and-so or fortunately for so-and-so, they don't work for the Ravens and the Colts and the Jaguars. So all these teams are going to have different rankings, Higgins, of these players and what they believe. So, yeah, it makes sense that a lot of these mocks are incorrect because, they're getting information from agents, maybe trying to boost their player stock. Maybe they're getting a smokescreen from a team. I think it's definitely real that, the mock drafts and whatever, the insiders' mocks don't always match up with the real thing.
And the biggest drops or surprises I think that we saw, this wasn't supposed to be a quarterback draft or a really strong one, but to only have one quarterback go in the first round, that it doesn't happen very often in the NFL. And for it to be Kenny Pickett falling all the way to the Steelers in the 20s, you and I last episode, we were talking about the Carolina Panthers, maybe the New Orleans Saints picking him. We didn't think he was going to fall maybe past 13 with the Saints. He falls into the 20s and is the only quarterback in the first round to a lot of people's surprise.
Yeah, I think, the biggest surprise was Malik Willis. Ends up being the third quarterback taken, and he has to wait till the third round.
I told you I was high on Ritter.
Yeah, you were high on Ritter. So, I mean, look, I think for Willis, he's in a good situation in the sense that he's not expected to start day one. And I hope he can develop into the franchise quarterback, that teams thought he could potentially be, or that at least fans thought he could potentially be coming into the draft. So, look, I'm rooting for him. His draft day story, is kind of a tough one. I'm sure it wasn't the weekend he envisioned, but he has every opportunity now in front of him to make the most of it. And look, some other quarterbacks went to some interesting situations. People were pretty high on the Western Kentucky kid, Zappy. So he ends up going and getting drafted by the Patriots. He'll now be most likely a career backup, right, to behind Mac Jones, the first-round pick a year ago. So we'll see what happens here, Higgins, but definitely a lot of interesting stories from the quarterback position. Sam Howell goes in the 5th round, Higgins, but pairs up with a wide receiver he threw 20 touchdowns to in college. So lots of fun storylines.
And Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, the quarterback out of Iowa State. So who knows? Maybe he doesn't become so irrelevant. Maybe he works his way onto a roster and finds his way onto the field. But I think, yes, it was surprising to see these quarterbacks fall the way they did. But I think it could be beneficial for a lot of these guys. I mean, you look at Desmond Ridder, who's going to Atlanta. He's not going to have the pressure to probably start day one with Marcus Mariota there. Ridder will be able to acclimate himself to the system and be able to get in when he's ready. Malik Willis in Tennessee, he doesn't really have much pressure to take that role from Ryan Tannehill right out the gate. In fact, Tannehill is expected to make so much more money next year. This might be one of those contract moves that they're hoping Malik can sit for a year, and then instead of having to pay Ryan Tannehill all that money next year, they can just move on to Malik Willis.
Yeah, we will see. We will see what happens there, but let's get into some bets, Higgins.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some NBA, and we had some very interesting games, and that Sixers game that was your Levy lock, Brett, it closed out, but the Sixers, they're now going to be without Joel Embiid for at least Game 1 and Game 2 because of an orbital bone fracture and a concussion. That has me a little worried, Brett. How worried would you be for the Sixers with that news?
So he's going to be reevaluated after Game 2 before Game 3 when the series comes back to Philadelphia. I imagine that by that time the concussion symptoms will have subsided and he'll be able to play with a face mask, Higgins. So, look, I think he'll be effective. I think he'll be a good player. Face mask might bother him a little bit, but he'll fight through it in the postseason. And, yeah, I'm a little concerned. This is now a guy with a thumb injury and a face injury, both pretty severe. So, look, it's not an ideal situation for the Sixers, but you play the hand you're dealt, Higgins. The Heat are beat up as well, to be fair. They've got Jimmy Butler dealing with some stuff. They've got Caleb Martin and PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry all dealing with stuff as well. So I use stuff because I can't go down all 5 injury problems on them off the top of my head, Higgins. But, like, one's a hamstring and another one's an ankle and something
Both
with
teams
the
are definitely
quad.
banged up.
Yeah, exactly. So these guys are all dealing with some injury problems. I think it's really unfortunate that the Sixers will be without Embiid for the first 2 games of the series, though.
It's obvious where the weight falls, though. It falls onto James Harden, and whether he's able to rebound from his kind of cold end of the regular season, and then Toronto guarded him and contained him pretty well. James Harden's going to be the difference maker for the Sixers on whether or not they can win this series. And to me, I don't know if they necessarily have to win either of the first 2 games without Joel Embiid. If they can split those without him, that is a big move for the Sixers. But if Harden can just get back into the swing of things, get back into a hot hand a little bit, that'll put the Sixers in a much better place. You mentioned how the Heat are injured as well. And so I look at these semifinals matchups odds, Brett, and the Sixers at plus 260, it just seems like good value to me, even with Joel Embiid's injury status. If he comes back in Game 3, I think that's superb value. If, let's say, the swelling doesn't go down or there's something that prevents him with the concussion protocol from getting back by Game 3, obviously the Heat at minus 350 are the better advantage there. I'm banking on the fact that Joel Embiid is going to be back for Game 3, and I'm also banking on the fact that James Harden is going to have to show up now, and without Joel Embiid being option 1A to James Harden's 1B, we've seen what Harden can do when he is option 1A, and he's clear-cut option 1A. And the Rockets, he was able to do that for a long time. Can he do that in Philadelphia, though? That's the question.
Yeah, Higgins, I gotta be honest. Don't love that bet, but I'm rooting for you.
Okay.
I read the series differently. I think Miami's the favorite in the series for a reason. And I think the Embiid injury, 80% of Embiid is better than most, but, Miami's just got this thing, Higgins, Heat culture that I really buy into. So, I think a beat up Embiid. Harden has not looked very good this year in a Sixers uniform. So, we'll see what happens. You certainly are reading it right if you believe Embiid comes back and is the difference maker that we think he can be. But I'd be nervous that he might be coming back down 0-2 already.
That very well may be the case. I think that James Harden's going to have to step it up, and I think he will in at least one of those games. It'll be interesting to see. You're right, the Heat obviously are the favorites with where we're looking at this right now with the injury news. What's interesting to me, though, Brett, is if you take a look at the Celtics-Bucks semifinals matchup, because they already played Game 1 on Sunday afternoon, and the Bucks won, so they have a 1-game series lead. Game 2 is going to be in Milwaukee as well, and if you look at the line, the Bucks are only minus 125 favorites over the Celtics to win this series. Now, yes, the Bucks are without Chris Middleton because of his MCL sprain, but I believe that Giannis is going to still be able to come out of this series, and with an injured Joel Embiid, to me, honestly, I think the Bucks still might be the favorite to come out of the East. I understand what we saw from Boston and that they are riding high off of that Brooklyn series, but I don't know if they can do that again against Giannis. I just don't.
Yeah, so this game's actually in Boston, Game 2, Higgins.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, they're in Boston, but I think very high likelihood the Celtics bounce back in Game 2. To be honest, I don't love the 4.5, which is actually why I'm taking the Bucks side plus 4.5. I think, pretty decent shot. The Bucks could win again. But 4.5 points seems like a lot for Boston. So I would say this. I probably like Boston to win the game. I probably like Milwaukee to keep it within 2 possessions.
Mm-hmm. And that's a Tuesday game. I like that spread at plus 4.5. Grabbing that early line, I think, might favor you well, Brett, as we get through Monday, and it might get a little closer. I'm looking at the Monday series, though, and the opener between the Sixers and the Heat, and I'm also going to put my money where my mouth is there. Sixers plus 7.5. It just feels like everyone's fading the Sixers because they don't have Joel Embiid. And maybe it's rightfully so. Maybe I am playing contrarian and I'm in a small minority here. But 7.5 points feels like a lot. I feel like James Harden's being overlooked, and with his back against the wall in this type of situation, I expect him to step up. And even if the Sixers don't win, to at least keep it close. That's 4 possessions.
Yeah, I mean, you're betting big on Harden here. Look, Harden's been a really great player during his NBA career. He has come up short in a lot of big playoff moments.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has.
I mean, feel free. God bless you. I think 7.5 is a big number as well, but you will not catch me backing these Sixers right now. Now, that's not to say they can't win. That's not to say they can't be competitive. That's not to say Harden can't play well. I just think, if something happens 70% of the time, that means 30% of the time it doesn't happen, but 30% is also the minority.
And maybe my reasoning is wrong, but my pick is right. And it's not James Harden that improves, but Tyrese Maxey steps up like we've seen him time again this year.
Yeah, it could be Maxey. Maybe Tobias Harris plays really well. So you're right, Higgins. There are plenty of other people on this team who can step up.
Absolutely. The Mavericks-Suns game also on Monday, that should be an interesting one. And then the Warriors-Grizzlies on Tuesday, Brett. That was an interesting game down the stretch on Sunday night. The Warriors were able to escape with a 1-point victory, but Ja Morant had an opportunity with a layup at the end that just missed. I mean, the Grizzlies nearly had that.
Yeah, that was a very exciting game down the end. Jaren Jackson Jr. was not missing shots the entire second half, Higgins. He was unbelievable from 3, making them all. So, look, we had the exciting finish with Klay Thompson missing a few free throws and then getting the, game-sealing defensive closeout, whatever you want to call it, contest on Ja Morant on that layup. So, a lot of highs, a lot of lows in this game. Draymond Green was ejected early on a questionable call. So, lots of stuff happening in that Memphis game 1. Lots of excitement. Jordan Poole had a 30-point game for the Warriors, Higgins. So I look forward to watching the rest of this series. It's going to be a blast.
I do too. I mean, Ja Morant really was able to pick it back up in the second half of that series against Minnesota, and he came into this game 1 just steamrolling. I mean, he had over 30 points. It'll be interesting, though, Brett. If I look at who I expect to be in the NBA Finals now after watching the beginning of these playoffs, Bucks and Warriors at plus 450. I'm not going to take it, but that interests me. I could see Giannis versus Steph in this Finals.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to predict the Finals this early, Higgins. I'm gonna keep my hot takes cool today.
All right. I have an MLB pick I want to jump into as well. I mean, we had some good baseball this weekend. If you listened to us last episode, I told you to go to social media because I've been taking the under bets on every single game the past few days. And let me give you an update on how that's going, because so far I did miss one of those days because I didn't get my bets in time, so I just called the entire day a wash. I'm either going to bet all of the days, all the games in a day, or none of them. And so 5 of the past 6 days I've been able to place these bets. And if it wasn't for today, Brett, I'd be doing pretty good. But overs galore on Sunday went from being up 3.5 units through 4 days worth of betting to now down 6.5, 7 units worth. So I'm hoping Sunday scaries create some unders on Monday, because Sunday saw a lot of runs.
Yeah, no, that is quite the turn of events there, Higgins. Wow, lots of runs on Sunday. I'm going through the Sunday scoreboard. Mets scored 9, Baltimore scored 9,
It was not a day
Minnesota
for
scored
unders.
9. Yeah, Seattle scored 7. Chicago and Milwaukee did their part for you, Higgins. That game was 2-0.
I went 3-11 though. Yesterday I went 11-4. Actually, I think I went 3-12 now that Mets one's officially lost now too for me. Yeah, I went 3-12 today on it.
Yeah, I mean, look at these teams. Colorado puts 10 across. St. Louis 7, Washington 11. I mean, you had the Nats score 11 runs against the Giants. That's a tough day.
Yeah, single teams are covering these overs on their own on Sunday, which made it very hard for me. That's absolutely right.
Definitely.
I'll be back at it again on Monday, though. I'm going to do it again this week. We'll keep evaluating episode by episode to see if I continue it. But there is a game I do want to talk about on Monday, Brett, and it's the New York Yankees traveling up to see the Toronto Blue Jays. This is going to be an interesting series every time we get it this year. I think the Yankees and the Blue Jays are my top two in the AL East, fighting for who's going to probably be at the top of this division at the end of the year. And the Blue Jays, it's early, but they're playing phenomenal at home. They're 9-4 at home. They just beat the Astros tonight to take a 2-1 series win over the Astros before they host the Yankees on Monday. And for some reason, the Yankees are the favorites, which is good for me, because the Blue Jays, when they are underdogs to start the year, they are 5-2. We have Jordan Montgomery on the mound against Ross Stripling. Neither of those pitchers are why I'm picking this. I'm picking the Blue Jay bats to just outscore the Yankees in this one, and I'm taking Toronto minus 105 on the money line.
Yeah, well, Higgins, you asked why is New York the favorite? They've won 9 straight baseball games. They have the best record in the major leagues. They've been beating up on some bottom feeders, but that's okay. 9 straight is 9 straight wins. No one can take those wins away from you. And lucky for the Yankees, Ross Stripling is not the Blue Jays ace or anything like that. So I think you're right, Higgins. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair with these two pitchers on the mound, Montgomery and Stripling, and these two offenses. So, look, should be a fun few days in Toronto between the Yankees and Blue Jays, two teams we expect to be competing in the AL East. And my advice, kind of what you're doing, Higgins, is I would just take the dog every day, because it's pretty much even, it's pretty much 50-50 split between these two. So, look, Monday, you're getting the home dog. I'd take it. If for some reason the pitching matchup really sways the line into the Blue Jays' favor, I would just take the Yankees that day.
I agree. And you mentioned the Yankees. They're on a 9-game win streak. That's a very good point. However, Brett, the Yankees have not played a game on turf yet this season. This is going to be their first game on turf, so we'll see if that has any effect to maybe their fielding. Maybe they get an error or something. Maybe it changes up a little bit. But Toronto, they're 9-4 at home, 9-4 on turf, so I'm just going to be back in the home guys for this game. But I agree with what you're saying. Taking the underdog in this series is probably the smart call.
Yeah, just take the daily dog, right? That seems like the move.
I think absolutely you're right there. Jumping into the NHL, Brett, because surprisingly we actually had one more NHL game on Sunday night to end the regular season. It was between Seattle and Winnipeg. Now the NHL playoffs officially begin. It's the Stanley Cup, baby, and there's no better playoff format than this, is there, Brett?
No, Stanley Cup playoffs are always some of the most fun, Higgins. I will be dialed into the Rangers on Tuesday night as they take on the Penguins.
That's going to be a series.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the East are really competitive this year. In the West, I think a lot of people expect the Avs, but anything can happen in the NHL playoffs, Higgins.
Absolutely anything can happen. And just like I've been taking some futures in the first round of the NBA series, and I did it again with the semifinals, I'm going to test my luck in the NHL as well. I've got two different picks here, Brett, for round one, and they're both one's going to be in the West, one's going to be in the East. My Western pick is between the Wild and the Blues. The Wild are the 2 seed, St. Louis is the 3 seed, and justifiably so with those seedings. The Wild are slight favorites at minus 165. However, if you look at how these teams played during the regular season, the Blue Jays won 3 times and lost 0 times. So the Blue Jays have the Wild's number. Do I expect them to sweep this series? No, but I think they're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be able to absolutely have a chance against this Wild team. And at plus 135, I think that's a pretty good value.
Yeah, I can't say you laid out any reasons why it shouldn't hit, other than the fact that we see crazy upsets all the time in these playoffs. And you know what, Higgins? Your next bet is one I really like, just to be honest. So that's the one I have more of an opinion on. No disrespect to the Blues Wild series, Higgins. Sure, it'll be a great series. But I'd be lying to you if I watch. I've actually watched one Wild game this year. It was the Rangers played the Wild on Henrik's jersey retirement night, so I was at that game. The Wild won, so I think the Wild are pretty good. But I haven't watched that much of the Blues. I did see the Blues a little bit on an East Coast trip. Maybe it was like January, February, where they were struggling, but that's not representative of their season because they were a pretty strong team this year.
Yeah, I mean, getting all 3 wins against the Wild. Granted, 2 of those games did go to overtime, but the Blues, I think, definitely have a chance in that one. But I understand, Brett, you're an East Coast guy. I understand why you'd want to talk about the East Coast matchup between Toronto and Tampa Bay. And for me, Brett, it's the fact that the Maple Leafs, they're cursed. The curse might not take effect in the first round, but they're cursed since the last time they won the Stanley Cup in 1967 because only 20,000 of the Toronto fans showed up to that parade because the Maple Leafs were winning so much back then that they were expecting that they were going to get another parade pretty soon, kind of like Boston in the 2000s. But the Lightning at plus 100 here as the underdogs is surprising to me because the Maple Leafs' history in the playoffs is that atrocious. The Lightning also, they're 2-2 against the Maple Leafs so far this season in the regular season, so it's pretty equal. I understand why the Lightning are plus 100 and the Maple Leafs are minus 120, but I can't, in good faith, back Toronto in the playoffs. I can't do it.
No, I think that's fair, Higgins. I think, look, if you have a 16-season playoff losing streak, I think, that says something about where your franchise at. That's a big weight on your shoulders. These players are going to feel it. And look, the Lightning are coming off back-to-back Stanley Cup championships, so this is a team that knows how to get it done in the postseason. They're going to have a healthy Stamkos, too, so that's an advantage for the Lightning. So I think the plus 100 number is a very good number, again, so I'm a big fan of this bet.
I think the Lightning should be the favorites personally, but Brett, you're absolutely right. That is going to be hanging over the head of the Toronto coaching staff, of the players, of the fans in that arena for those games. They can say as much as they want that it doesn't affect them, it doesn't bother them, they're not thinking about it, but in the back of their mind, subconsciously or consciously, it's there. They are aware of this streak that team has.
Yeah, it's been a brutal run for the Leafs, so I like the Lightning here, plus 100. I like that bet, Higgins.
All right, well, I can't wait to tune in on Monday for some playoff hockey, some playoff basketball, and for my MLB pick. Brett, let's jump into the Levy Lock pick of the pod, though, Brett, because I'm not going with the playoffs for my pick of the pod. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays money line, like we were talking about in that Yankees-Blue Jays series that's starting on Monday. maybe just take whoever's the underdog in that matchup because of how well both these teams are playing. But to start the series, the home team Blue Jays are the underdog. They are 9-4 at home, and the Yankees have not played on turf yet this season. So I'm backing Toronto.
I love it. Higgins is going to the turf in a baseball game. He's saying the turf makes the difference. We will find out. Higgins, I only made one bet on this podcast, so it's obviously going to be my Levy lock. I think the Bucks keep it close in Boston on Tuesday night. Plus 4.5 is the number right now. Bucks won game one pretty handedly, so we'll see what happens here, Higgins. I think Boston probably wins game two, but I think the Bucks keep it within 2 possessions.
I think that's going to be a very good game. It's going to be a fun series to watch with how well Boston performed against Brooklyn. I think they're going to give Milwaukee a shot, but I think Milwaukee's got that series as I gave out with my futures pick.
Fair enough.
Make sure to follow us on social media, though, at NBBPod on Twitter, at NextBestBet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page and YouTube channel. This has been episode 201 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you guys again soon.